All right, we're live. Let's see if this bricks my computer. Hopefully not, but
Only one way to find out.
great. But okay. So, talking about Endgames tonight. Um, Hopefully, should be a good show. For the record, anyone tuning in at this point, I should stay on the stream page. Uh, Pulled most of these from a wonderful, wonderful book written by Mark Deveretsky. You may have heard of him.
Yes, the in-game manual.
Yeah, he's Mark Deveretsky. Unfortunately deceased, but excellent player, excellent trainer, and left a collection of
And you taught him
wonderful
everything.
literature. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fantastic books better people than me have read and understand. And I'm just not there. I'm still too busy trying not to blunder in the opening.
No shame. It's, I don't know. I feel like learning endgames can be a very helpful tool for uh, really players of all levels for calculation training and all that good
Oh,
stuff.
What up,
100%.
Zach?
100%. Everyone spends, there's like virtually no one in the world who spends enough time on end games, except for maybe you.
Eh, I still blow more than I'd like, but
Yeah. But no, I mean, end games are, I think for most amateurs, they feel dry, they feel there's rarely any crazy mating stuff. It's very tough to make yourself do that legwork to get good at end games, but more than any other part of the game, I think that's where you'll get the most free wins.
mm-hmm. Yeah, people just hand you wins every once in a while, and that's always a nice feeling. But
Yeah.
all right, um, just hopping on to make sure that somebody's able to mod the chat while we do this. But yeah, all right.
How do I set a position? I was gonna put the puzzle in just in case we get there. Oh, I
Uh,
found it. Oh Jesus. Okay, continue as you were. You can talk. I'm just
yeah,
loading the puzzle.
gotcha. I'm gonna disconnect so I don't see it. Let me know once it's up. Um, Hello to everyone in chat. Tonight, I think we have a real treat planned. We're going to be doing a stream not just on endgames, but more on how to learn endgames and how to really study the endgame in a way that's kind of time effective. Because I know, at least for me, I'll look at a position and an hour later, I'll have forgotten almost all of my analysis from it. So, um, I think this is going to be a lesson on how to really generalize from the endgame and make broader conclusions that are more that are applicable to very complicated positions. Um, so it'd be a lot of fun. Um, hmm. So I'm reading the preface for this book, and here Mark Devretsky's talking about, in the last few years, the rules governing many tournaments and matches have been fundamentally changed. These days, games are hardly ever adjourned. I don't remember the last time that I saw a game that was adjourned.
Yeah, right.
Hello! So, a puzzle all
Okay, I
set
give up.
up.
I have no idea how the puzzle thing. I thought I figured it out, and now I
Okay,
don't.
it's okay. I can pull it up if we get time. Um,
All right.
but alright, let's take us over to chapter 1. This is going to be the first position that we look at tonight. For anyone who's seen uh, Rook in games with F and H pawns, you may know that there are some drawing possibilities for the defending side, but probably, at least our ideal audience, may not have looked at this in super detail, and some of you may be absolutely astounded to find out that this is, in fact, a draw. Um, so, I guess the first thing that I want to, before we really jump into this, is talk about the endgame in general and how we can get better at it. Um, Really, I think there's two kind of endgame books that I've seen, and may or may not agree with me on this one slightly, but I think one is kind of a reference textbook. Think like Deveretsky's Endgame Manual or Ruben Fine's like Basic Chess Endgames. where it's just kind of an index of positions and you look through them, and it's really useful if you're playing a correspondence game or something where that sort of thing is allowed, but really it's not incredibly helpful for your average player to just read through the positions and play out the moves, right?
Hmm.
You learn a lot of really specific maneuvers and that sort of thing. Um, that's not too helpful. And the other one is more um, aimed at improvement of general endgame technique, like centralize your king, don't hurry, that sort of principled thinking. This series I think is going to be a little bit between the two. We're going to cover some number of theoretical positions and some number of general technique ideas, but hopefully we can see how to merge those two ideas together. Um,
I think to your point, shameless plug because I'm in no way affiliated with him, but I like Jeremy Silman's in-game manual. It's the only dedicated in-game text I own. I always thought that was really helpful, and that was when I was starting out. That was probably the most helpful book to getting over ratings bump, like to be able to play, get a better position, and then convert that. That got me, a lot of wins just doing something as simple as that. And that book's not even exhaustive by any means. So
yeah, it's definitely a great way to get your feet wet with endgames. Um, so okay, let's start. I guess let's start talking about this. And I don't think that this is a position that anyone in the chat necessarily immediately knows what to do with. Although if you do, credit to you for having seen it before. But I think for most people, the first time they'd see this position, they would have to really struggle to come up with a defensive plan. Does that sound fair?
absolutely.
Okay. So, first thing I want to do is just kind of go through the way this game played out and then see if we can draw some conclusions at the end. So, white trying to make some progress. Made rook g6 check here. Where do you think we should go with the king? Still there?
At least in some ideas, I wonder if that's the safest place forward, and it's hard for white to make any progress with this pawn.
Okay. I think okay, king h7. Yeah, you cut out there for a minute. So king h7 definitely does not uh, blow the draw by any means, but the defense is more difficult with our king pinned on the edge of the board. F pawn is more free to advance. So in these endgames, generally the f pawn is going to be the more dangerous of the two. For example, if we could choose which of these pawns we wanted to just take off of the board, in general it's going to be the f pawn. This h pawn is a lot harder to queen, right?
I think as we play through the structure, I'll show you my defensive idea with the king over on h7
Mm-hmm.
relies on this rook giving lateral checks
Mm-hmm.
as this f pawn advances.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Your way of doing this. I'm
Okay.
making my whole life a lot harder, I guess.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what happens after king f7. We can come back to king h6 at the end. I'm just going to write a little comment here for that. Check this out later. And so we will. But in the game, king f7 was played. So after king f7, white, of course, plays rook to g5. The idea with this move is that suddenly you're maybe freeing up some squares for our king to come forward. It's Genki in chat. Yes, it is absolutely a draw, which is truly quite interesting. Yeah, so after rook to g5, the king is threatening to come forward. We're maybe supporting this kind of advance, although I suppose if we make this advance, our king may not have a whole lot of shelter from checks on the side. So, excuse me.
So here I mean, then again, intuitive plan, prevent the f pawn from advancing. See if we can. That would be what I played.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this. The move played here was rook to b1, and the author writes the comments, a typical retreat of the black rook in such situations. Here, it keeps the option of checking the enemy king along both ranks and files. So the point is, we're not really afraid of this advance because we have this string of checks, and by coming so far behind the pawn, we give ourselves extra possibilities. Make sense?
Yeah, seems reasonable.
All right. So white plays rook to c5. The author does note h6 as another opportunity here. Any idea what you'd play here?
Um, it's interesting because I feel like I almost don't know if there's anything black can do right away. Further than maybe I can pick it up, but right now, ooh, I don't think any checks help me.
You're absolutely
Can
right.
I
Rook,
just want to wait. I'm
rook.
not sure if
Go ahead.
I said I want to. I just want to wait here. I don't want to do anything because I don't think immediately this thing can't run.
Mm-hmm. So what we're pointing out here is that if black could just pass and white played h7, then something like rook to h1 might be the right idea.
Yeah,
Um, in this
I
exact
don't know. I'm
position,
trying to decide
mhm.
problem passing going to the second flat second.
Um, I don't think that it matters too much which square you choose. I could be wrong. On general principle, I want to go to a1 just to give myself the maximum distance between
Yeah,
to check from back here versus g2. Although I suppose if the king is running down our rook, probably we are in a good spot anyway. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Black can just make a waiting move here. There is a trick that he needs to avoid, though, and that's rook to g1. This is definitely no good. And we'll go back to rook to a1 and show why this works, but I just want to show why this kind of natural checking idea doesn't work out. After king to f5, rook to h1, right? You want to go after this pawn. Rook to g7 check. Yep, exactly right. And so here, in
Rutro.
general, yeah, these positions, once the black king is on the edge of the board, end up, black ends up in a lot of trouble. There's mating threats and all sorts of ideas that really we don't want to have to deal with. So we can almost just stop calculating here. And that's one of the general guidelines that we can take away for these kinds of positions is once our king is on the edge of the board, if we have another variation where we don't end up on the edge of the board, well, let's at least give priority to calculating that other variation. So let's come back to rook a1 and see if white can do anything. So rook a1, for example, rook to h5 is a nice try, right? Putting the rook behind the pawn. Oops.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think these are the obvious moves right here in this position.
Yeah. So I think after this one, I think we're just repeating moves.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
give him
so.
a check and he has to come back. Um, so that leaves kind of rook to h5 as the other obvious move. What do we do now?
King involved. We need to keep an active king, right? That's one of the biggest, I think, mistakes I make in the end game is I let my king get passive. I worry about my pieces, and then suddenly you're losing. But like maybe bring the king back here and try to cover the square.
You got it. Yep. White's threatening to queen the h-pawn, so all of a sudden the h-pawn is the more dangerous of the two pawns. And this is the best way to stop it. So just play king to g8, and we don't have any problems. Whoops. Am I making... Can you guys see my moves on the board stream? Oh. Did the stream freeze? What happened here? Can someone in chat please confirm that you can see the moves that I'm making? Can see some. Okay. Good.
Can see some. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
I'm kidding.
Okay. Yes, it works. Good. All right. So yeah, after king to g8, we can play a few more moves here to kind of see what's going on. But after f5, king to h7, later we'll reach this position and we'll see that black is in no real danger here. In general, the white king has a lot of trouble finding shelter from checks from the side. So running back to where we started to deviate, I think This was our main variation, right? And we wanted to look at h6, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So yeah, let's go back to rook to, well, no,
C5.
yeah. Yeah, rook to c5. Right. Fantastic. Okay. So rook to c5, what do we do with black? Well, first of all, what's the idea associated with rook to c5?
So one of the big things I think for white is you want to, be able to advance this rook and force this king hit back.
Mm-hmm.
I assume white's going to play something like king f5 and start trying to make some checks here and force this guy back to the edge of the board. So if I mean I don't know if black can stop that directly, but I think black needs to this rook to a good square here. I don't see any king moves that really prevent that idea. So the question is, where do I want to put it here?
Hmm.
Do I get something from this check? Intuitively, I think I do get something from this check because then I'm cutting off I'm cutting off this file. Push.
Yeah, okay. Um, an instructive game, Igor Smyslov, Moscow, 1947. Mr. Fartbrains, you actually identified the game that we are following. Well done. Yeah, so in the game, Smyslov played king to f6, and I want to
Hmm.
disagree with your assessment of the king moves here, right? Because here we are very directly stopping king to f5, and if you notice, if we check here, here, check,
Then we forced him back. Yeah,
yep, we're almost exactly returning to the starting position here.
it's
I
a good
believe this
point.
is the starting position. So this
Mm-hmm.
kind of repels Black's assault. So yeah, you did very well in summarizing White's idea, though. He does want to play king to f5 and check this king back. So here, unfortunately, he has to come up with another idea, though. Whoops, after king to f6.
What about e6 here?
Hmm?
That'd be my thought. Was if we get to this position, maybe I can push e6 and maybe.
I think my
Hmm,
king gets back in
I don't
time.
think it's. I think that's. I wouldn't. I would not want to repeat. I try to do something different, but
Yeah. Hmm. Well, don't think that it goes anywhere. We can analyze it later on. H6, I think I can just play king g6 without too much trouble here. But yeah, I think this actually transposes to a position later on. Um,
yeah,
that's a problem.
that does. Yeah.
So yeah, rook to. So we end up playing rook to c6. White does need to drive the black king back. Play king to g7. I apologize. This is more accurate. And king to g5. Now the point is, on this move we have f5. So what to do?
Sorry, I was just looking back at my move. I thought there's a trick. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought there was a trick back in the line. Let me go back to see where we're at.
Sure.
Okay. You played, and this is where we are.
Yes. Hey Nick, welcome to the stream.
I'm trying to decide here. I mean, if he goes here and then we push this pawn, then all of a sudden does he run out of shelter with this? Is one idea.
Hmm. I think he might
I
be
don't
in.
know that he does though.
Remember that any variation where our king is forced to the edge is one we probably want to be avoiding.
Yeah, so I wonder then if maybe we go back here. What about maybe this check?
Mm-hmm.
White's king is forced to the side.
Okay. What do we do after that? So far we're... You got it? King to f5 is played. How do we continue?
Okay. Do we can we just ask White how he's going to defend his H pawn? Is that good
Hmm.
enough, or just um, no? Because
Mm-hmm.
then probably this and then here and
Actually, I think there's a more forcing continuation. After h6 check, there, even though you win the pawn, the king and pawn endgame is lost.
You're right. You're right. Good
So,
point.
if the h pawn is untouchable anyway, is there any purpose in putting your rook behind it?
No, certainly not.
All right.
That's why you're the master and I am just the lowly Padawan.
So here we want to stay flexible with our rook. We just go back to a1. And the point is, again, we're just going to check him backwards. So, rook to c7 check. Of course, after rook to g6, what would you play? What was that?
We just go.
I think your mic cut out there.
Oh, I thought it would just be going back to the center and king f7, and this is very similar to what we had before.
Yep, this is exactly right. By keeping our kings here, if white can't drive the king back, we're going to end up driving white back, and this is no problem. So we're just in time. But after rook to c7, we have to choose. Do we want to be in the edge of the board or in front of the h-pawn?
I mean, I would go to the front of the h pawn. That was my first idea, defensive idea. Was I thought that.
So here, white's kind of brought about a position where, yeah, maybe he's going to give away the h-pawn, but the f-pawn might run if we're not very, very careful. So the question for black now is, after rook to e7, which is an important move for white, he needs to be able to shelter his king from checks on this side. What do we do with black? Can we afford to take the pawn?
Definitely not. I'm just trying to figure out. Made it, so that seems like a horrible idea.
Yeah, king takes, rook h7, nasty trick. So what else to do?
Well, the question is it better to keep this rook here laterally checking, or to maybe put this rook behind this pawn?
Hmm. Well, any suggestions?
Well, I have to try to do some internal calculation. It's hard to think out loud.
Well, a question for you. Do you know after rook a5 check, king f6, can we take the h5 pawn?
Going back after rook a5.
King f6.
Oh, it still seems like it would be untouchable. That. Yeah, because then we just lose the. Yeah, you can't take it because of this trick.
Right.
That's
Can we take with the rook?
we have to take with the rook. Oh, you mean I see. In this position, can we take with the rook?
Yes, sir.
Uh, I don't know. You can't take with the rook either. I'm having a harder time seeing the refutation here, but then just here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And then that's
threatening
it.
mate. King to h7. Only move, no?
And yeah, and then now we can start advancing.
Yeah. And it turns out, I believe here, black's king is stuck on the edge of the board, and white will be queening. Let me double check that assessment, but I apologize. This is still drawn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, after
Oh, I guess it's really hard to get everything out of the way to get the pawn there.
right, I think you're still in time to come around here with checks, and if the rook moves, then the black king gets in front,
Oh,
which is a nice trick.
so
But
that's interesting.
yeah, but we didn't
That
actually
seems
look
very
at.
scary.
Probably, sorry. Critical move here is probably just rook here. And after this, it seems like white's going to be freed up to start advancing.
Yeah, then I have
Since,
nothing better than to go back and
right. And maybe we can say white's made some progress in this position if he can make this sort of advance.
yeah.
So, instead, black just stayed flexible. Just okay, I'm gonna wait. If I can't calculate progress that way, then, well, it's on you to make progress. So now what? Well, I guess it's time for white to make a move, so he plays... Can also play king g4 instead of rook e5. I don't doubt it. Yeah. Let's see here. Well, yeah, I don't doubt it. So rook to b1. White played rook to e8 with, well, nice ideas, right? Saying I can play a winning game too, potentially also threatening this check in some variations. Sorry, different position. Yeah, it's hard to jump back and forth. If you can give move numbers, I can do a better job of tracking through, but yeah, so there's this idea of checking black out of the way. Sure, the rook will have to retreat. There's some other ideas. In general, taking away this last rank can be very valuable, so potentially also provides shelter should white's king be able to make it thus far. But it also gives away the 7th rank, so the king just returns. Rook to e5, and... sorry, rook to a1, black continues waiting. In this position, it's very difficult for white to make any sort of progress. So, rook to d5, white is kind of waiting as well here. Rook to f1. So, author notes, not a bad move, but it's quite good enough to keep the rook in the corner. So, potentially losing some flexibility of checks on the side here. Rook to d4. So now this is an idea that we have to react to. Right? White has freed up his king, potentially. So what do we do?
So the question is, do we put the king back in front, or do we try to blockade this h pawn? I feel like if I put the king over here,
Yeah, seems like white's making some progress.
yeah.
Mr. Farbrains, it is not 100 endgames you must know. It was, one of the authors was Devretsky.
Wait, but here can't. I wonder if I can pick this up and still get back to defend. No.
You should be able to.
Right? So this is actually very similar to the position we got to before that was still drawable,
Yeah,
despite
this is,
picking up.
I can confirm
So
that
that
this should still be fine.
So that should be the movement. Then going this should be okay.
Don't know that it blows anything. Yeah, still objectively drawn. But I do think that you're making your life harder for yourself by exiling your king on the edge here. So king f7.
I don't understand how greedy I am. Every pawn, I can take
you just want the pawn. No, I get it. I'm all
like
over
the
it.
knight orc for a reason, okay?
So, in fact, I think you're forgetting about a piece here. After rook to d4, isn't one of our pieces lacking moves?
I mean, certainly we can just go back.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yep. Rook to a1. And the point is that any sort of king invasion now is met by these lateral checks. Goodness. Just like this. Is my name Dermot? No. I have Devretsky's endgame manual. Fantastic. Problem is, this endgame is in every single book. You're absolutely right. This endgame is in probably every single endgame book. There will be more later on that will not be in every single endgame book, but for now I just wanted to go over some of the themes that are featured in this and see if we can generalize about them to other endgames. See, after king to a1, so we see rook to d6 with the idea potentially coming forward with this king, also cutting off the black king. And we see rook to a5 check, king to g4, rook to a1. And we're just repeating. So rook to b5 is also brings us right back to our starting position, if you'll note. 14 moves later, white has made absolutely zero progress. But rook to a1, was played. Rook to e6, and I'm just gonna start cycling through these moves pretty quickly now, and we can recap at the end. So rook g1, king f5, rook a1. You can see black's kind of just getting tired of waiting, but there's nothing wrong with waiting there. H6, king h7, exclam, importantly stepping in front of this pawn. Notice any other king move, I believe, allows the black king to be forced to the edge of the board. Yeah, okay. King h7, rook to d6, rook to a2, black just waits. King to g5, rook to g2, saying, hey, pick which pawn. King to f6, and king takes h6. And this is remarkably similar to a number of the positions that we've looked at, but this is still an important position to know how to draw. So, question is, after king takes h6, king to e7 check, how do we continue?
Um, Best way to continue here. I mean, you always want your king in front, but we can't get in front. I mean, the question is, do we stand the H file or do we come back in?
Confirming my suspicions, but yeah. So here it doesn't matter, and I think we may be giving away a tempo with f6 if white is able to get that in. So for that reason, I believe king to h7 was played. Just at the point of there's no checks here, and we can always step back up to the pawn if needed. Also, the defensive method that we're going to employ, it doesn't actually matter whether our king is on. Well, for the defensive method we'll end up employing, it is important that our king stays on this side of the pawn. It's okay. King to h7, pawn to f5. What to do now?
No.
f2. Not afraid of this pawn advancing further?
Bring it. Boom. You got nothing.
A nice idea. Yeah, okay. Follow you out with it.
Let your pawn run, man. You don't scare me. I got my rook behind it.
Okay. What about... I wonder if I don't have...
See, that's easy enough that even I can. It's not that. It's not that tough.
What about this? Sorry. What about this one?
Dude, I'm trying to figure out, did anything change here? Can I just... I can just stay here. Because this guy has to move out of the way eventually.
I just want to come to f8 with tempo.
Okay. We'll end up in a position like this.
Yep.
Right? This should be okay.
Yep. And this is exactly the defensive setup that we ended up shooting for straight from the get-go. So yeah, this is quite a nice one. Notice our king is on the shorter side of the pawn, and we're giving lateral checks from this side, so the white king ends up without space to hide from them. Yeah, absolutely. But we reached this from a slightly different move order. Played rook e2 check here. And after, let's see, rook to e6, rook to a2, f6. Do you know the drawing move here?
The drawing move here. Well, you have to, so that I think it's rook a. Yes, it's rook a.
Yep, absolutely. So we just
It
prevent
didn't
the
push
white.
it, then
Mm-hmm. And the same thing. So there's nowhere really for the white king to hide except for here. But what happens on king f6?
a king f6. Then we just play rook a8 again. No, that doesn't work. I did something wrong here.
Mm.
This is why it's not good enough to know the positions. You have to know why they win.
That's right. So this is
Everyone can learn from me.
we're approaching a theoretical position, and in fact, this is the one that I want to focus on. Um, after king to f7, um, king to h6. This is a pretty important theoretical position for rook in games, and this is where really exact knowledge helps us. This is a position that probably we should have studied just as a kind of base foundation for endgames. Um, and there's a variety of points here, and I'll leave the viewers to examine this on their own because I think that I could probably spend an entire lecture on important theoretical positions in rook endgames because there's 30 or 40 of them. Um, but suffice it to say, all rook endgames are drawn as long as you know what you're doing, right? Um, but this is the kind of exact knowledge that we need to have in order to play by principles earlier. We need to have been able to see this position and gone, oh, this is drawn. Um, and we'll come back to f7, rook a7, but for here after rook e1, do you know what to do?
So the issue is that if he can get this king out of the way and get his pawn going, so we can't let the king go forward. I don't remember. I'm trying to. I know I've looked at this before, but I don't remember.
Okay, well, it's good that we're looking at it now then. Simplest way is rook a7 check. Um, and the
And then you
point,
have to go back.
mhm. The point is that
Yeah.
if the king is allowed into g6, white can be in some trouble. For instance, on like this kind of move, king g6 is very nice. The pawn can't go forward because we have control of f7. Um, I'm lying. There's checks here that end up winning our rook there. Let's see. Anyway, there's various perpetual ideas. I would have to put them on the board to look at them individually, but rook e7 was played, and we just go back to 8. Can I play some games? I mean, I could, but there's plenty of other strong players that you could watch play games. I think that there's roughly a million videos on YouTube that would be more instructive than me playing games. I'm a fine player, but yeah, we have checking distance. Railbird points out that the king cannot chase down our rook as we are far enough away that we would be able to come back and attack the pawn. Yeah, thank you. For some reason, I'm blanking out while streaming. Feels bad. Yeah, but okay. So the rook comes back to block the check. We play rook a8, prevent the king invasion to the 8th rank. Um, should be noted, black can also play rook a1 here, but more complicated than needed. So rook to a8, kind of the mechanical way to do this. Rook to d7, just waiting move and preparing king to e7. And king to h7. Sorry, I keep thinking that I see things in chat and it's just things disappearing. Okay. So king to h7. Now this is a mate threat, which we need to address. So how should we go about that?
Just check him. Check
Yep,
him off. Nope.
absolutely. Okay. King to e6. What now?
I think we can just check again here.
Hmm. Okay.
And I don't see what he. I mean, even if he brings the rook back, then we just go back to where we were.
Yeah, so far so good. Okay. Rook d6.
And then And then we just go back again.
Yep. So after rook d4, king g8, rook g4 check, king f8, a draw was agreed in this game.
I hope so.
Yeah, so 33 moves, a struggle in the endgame. Um, but yeah, let's look at this and see if we can draw some conclusions about rook endgames in general. Um, just from looking at kind of the ending of one game. Sure, it is a classic, and it's a classic for good reason. I mean, really masterful defense from the black side. Who would think 2 pawns down we'd have drawing chances if we know what we're doing, right? But yeah. So first of all, summarizing things that we can note on this. Um, Definitely, we should aim to keep our king on f7 until there's a danger that it'll be forced onto the last rank, right? I guess we didn't actually look at how dangerous some of those positions on the last rank are, but suffice it to say that many of the positions with the Black King cut off on the last rank are losing. White has ways to combine mating threats with promotion threats, and ultimately Black's position collapses. That's probably generalizable to most rook endgames, yeah?
Hmm.
Try to
I
keep our
think
king off the edge. Or try to... We need to have a way to deal with mating threats.
right.
A concrete plan in mind. And we saw once there was a chance that our king might be driven to the edge of the board, here, rather than going to the edge of the board, we stand in front of the h-pawn. And this seemed like it was good enough in all the variations that we checked out. So, let's see. Yeah, so
So compare
that's...
this and real quick, just in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
this to that going to h7. That's kind of the idea I saw is that it's hard for when we came back to this initially. My initial thought, like I said, was to end up in a position like we got into later. It was to play for something like that where not that h6 position. But anyways, I had some idea that there was a defensive setup there, and like I said, I guess I didn't spoil it, but it's much harder that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
We don't have to
here,
do this. I'll go back and look at this later because to me this would be the intuitive plan.
just going for the h-pawn immediately. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can look at it off stream. It's
Alrighty.
it's interesting. Um, yeah, so keeping our king in front of the f-pawn, generally the more dangerous pawn, unless it would avoid us stepping on the edge, and otherwise we go and blockade the h-pawn. Um, so I do want to mention, of course, not every position with f and h pawns is drawn. And I keep coming back to this idea that somehow White's position will collapse if his king is on the back rank, right? So I guess probably I should prove that analysis.
I
So,
guess.
yeah, so I mean, if we're on the other side of this, it's good to know what happens and what situations we need to know to avoid. So I think the easiest way to win these positions is f6. Just immediately threatening king to g6 with mating ideas. And the conclusion from this
Mm-hmm.
that we can draw, when compared with this one, is notice how the h-pawn is going first? If black is in time to
Yeah.
nab that, and this pawn goes second, then typically there's some sort of saving method, whereas if the f-pawn goes first, well, typically it offers us more chances. Yeah, surprise stream worked. We didn't announce it. Goodness. So yeah, f6. Black probably tries something like rook to a1, this sorts of check. We need to keep the king off of g6, right? Because if the king reaches g6, this mating threat is going to be scary.
Or the problem.
Yeah. So, what to do?
Somewhere making progress.
Well,
The two obvious ideas that White needs, well, I think everybody would think about are:
mhm.
can you move the king to the side? Is that good enough, or do you bring this check in?
So I personally play the check. I like the same idea that Black used. Black, whenever he was checking back here, he said, White, you have to choose a pawn to protect. Now White is applying that same idea to the Black King. Black King should not be allowed to stop both of our pawns. So the defense that holds out longer is king to h8. After king to f8, what's the easiest winning idea?
The easiest winning idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just advance.
Oh yeah, just advancing is good enough here. There's nothing that black can really do to stop h7, h8. Goodness, I keep clicking outside the box. Ruh-roh. Oh no, not a rook on h8. Yeah, so the trouble with this is yeah, you got it. And uh, on the other hand, like trading everything on h8 is not a problem. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I was thinking the king was there. Yeah, okay, so king to h8. So here we have to try something a little different. Any ideas?
I think I'd come up with the same idea, don't I?
King to h6. And after rook to a6, probably it's still working.
After rook to a6, then I can play
Rook f7.
f7, and then a threatening mate. He
Yep,
comes back, and then I'm here.
then you're on g6. Yep, 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 yep. Very nice. Okay, so rook to f1. I apologize. I'm consulting a computer there. This is now a draw.
Now the difference is that's a problem.
Yep. So I still have that check. Um,
Maybe not h6. Oh, then I see. Then you can maybe just play g6.
there you go. Yeah, come in with the king. When in doubt, use all of your pieces. Endgames 101, yeah. So,
On the right.
rook g1, of course. We don't want the king to sit on g6. King to f7. Rook to a1. Coming here to check. Rook to g8 check. Getting the back rank. King to h7. Rook to e8. And now we don't have the same defense anymore. You see why?
Yeah, I mean, we have black has no checks in this position.
Okay. Rook a7. Actually, here, this might let us save it, transposing to one of the previous theoretical positions, I believe. No, I
Really?
apologize. No, you're right, you're right. Yeah, I was thinking if the pawn was already here on h6, maybe we have this kind of idea, not letting the king forward or just back. But even easier than this is just king to f8 with f7 coming.
Yep, that's definitely simpler.
So, yeah. So this very brief analysis just shows one way for white to win once he has the black king cut off is the advance of the f pawn and checkmating threats with the king on g6. So, did want to include that, but yeah, I think really just playing through this once is enough, right? The difference between having never seen this idea before and having to figure it out over the board is huge. And there's so many positions like this in endgame theory where you don't need to memorize this. You just have to remember one of white's major winning ideas is checkmating threats. How do I create checkmating threats? Well, I play f6 and I trap his king on the edge of the board. If I don't have that, well, I need to come up with some other way to drive his king back, right? So ultimately in chess, a lot of the times it's sufficient to remember the winning ideas in these kind of critical positions. Does that make sense?
I think I think that's one of the things that as I've played a little bit more and gotten slightly less terrible, still terrible, just less terrible. I've noticed that I worry less about specific sequences and more about remembering the ideas because a lot of times, as your chess vocabulary improves, I think you can, if you know the right principles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a way to cut down on the insane amount of memorization that ideas and certain kinds of end games or middle game positions.
Certainly true. So I think this was just to expose us to some of the ideas with in rook endgames with F and H pawns, I think Mr. Fartbrain did a great job of summarizing these, with it, which is just all else being equal, keep the king on the F file. When the rook pawn gets to the sixth rank, the king has to go in front of it, and that is the defensive idea. And the if you're pressing in this endgame, if you can confine your opponent's king on the edge of the board, look for a way for checkmate ideas, and that's all the theory for these endgames that I remember. But I think I've drawn the defensive side of this 3 times, and I haven't ever had the opportunity to win it, but it's saved my tail more than once, and I certainly don't remember the
Lose
concrete
pawns.
analysis.
Lesson there.
Hmm?
For pawns, I think that's the lesson there.
One more time.
I said you should lose fewer pawns. That's the real lesson there if you had to draw this 3 times.
Hey, I mean, I bail out into it from pawn down endgames. It's all about
Well,
throwing that
you trust
last pawn
yourself with
away. I mean, I think this endgame is easier to draw than some of the 2 against 1 endgames.
some very tricky 2 against 1 in games that I've managed to lose from a virtually dead drawn position. So I can definitely speak to that.
Yeah, so um, from this, I think we can take a look at another more expansive section of endgame theory, which is rook against single pawn endgames. Um, Pretty much any reference on these can be enormous. I think there's a book titled Rook Against Pawns, ironically enough, that was more than 400 pages, something like that. And I mean, that seems enormous to me to have to memorize. I never, ever, ever want to have to do that. So instead, I familiarize myself with the key ideas, and from that, I can solve almost any of these positions over the board. And I've had to more than once, and it's saved me more than once, and I've won more than once. I keep saying more than once, but frequently I've won these positions from players that thought they were drawn or thought that didn't know how to evaluate them. And hey, maybe I don't know how to evaluate them uh, perfectly, but I know what moves to play, and I arrive at the proper evaluation, or I make a swindle, right? And so that's what's really important here, is saving half points from in games that you don't deserve them, or earning the full point in games that were drawn just by remembering ideas.
If anyone wants to talk about games, earning half points in games you don't deserve them, go look at my first game versus TonyRo, where he was just like better the whole game. And it turns out if you sack enough rooks, you can get out of any position. That's the lesson. But I think your point's well taken that sometimes knowing these end game ideas, they're immensely valuable. I actually had a game over the board not too long ago where draw that just by knowing a little bit more of some winning ideas um, from a minor piece versus rook endgame that I managed to find a win in a dead drawn position. So I think it's immensely valuable in any endgame study.
Um, it's okay. Let's turn our attention to this position. I just want to cover. I think there's something like eight big ideas. Um, and some of these are just cases where the big idea doesn't work, and it's important to remember those too. And this is one of the biggest bodies of endgame theory, but if you can remember 8 ideas, you'll be able to play these positions nearly perfectly. So,
Well, let's see if I can learn something today.
alright. Well, I know we talked a little bit before the stream about some of these positions. Do you have any idea what white should play here in this one?
So in these positions, the big thing, right, is if you can keep the black king away from the pawn and bring your own king in positions. These the rook versus pawn in games. In general, there are definitely nuances,
Mm-hmm.
but right now, this king can never get ahead of the pawn. He can never advance. All he can do is send this pawn on a very sad solo mission to get eaten.
It's okay. Um, let's just play this all the way out and make sure that the pawn can't do anything by himself. What do we do? looks good to me. There is another method here that I want to draw attention to, and that is that you don't have to wait for the pawn to reach a2. You can actually play rook a3 here. The king is too far away. And after the pawn pushes, we use that extra tempo to get behind the pawn. And this, I think, is an important idea in rook against two pawns, where we use the tempo by attacking one of the pawns to get behind that pawn by attacking laterally. So this is something I wanted to draw attention to, and I think this is the easiest defensive method, for this sort of thing. But yeah, absolutely. Cutting the king off is the first big idea in all of these endgames, where even if this were a knight's pawn, for example, if this pawn were, or a bishop pawn here, as long as we're forcing the king to go the far way around, we're probably gaining some time somewhere. It's okay. Let's move on. Go ahead. Question? You cut out there.
Wait, for me or for you?
No.
Oh, no, I know questions.
Okay.
No questions.
Gotcha. All right. So moving on to this position. This position was white to move and black to try to save himself. So.
Oh, there we go. Black try to save himself.
Yep. So after rook to a2 check, sorry, h2 check, where do you go?
I don't know that. Oh yeah, you have to go here.
Okay. And after... does it matter where I go? Not too much. Let's go to b3. Yep, okay. So here we have a stalemate idea. And this is definitely one to be on the lookout for. If we have a far advanced knight's pawn, or I think in general knight and rook pawn, we have quite a few stalemate ideas to be aware of. And this is one of them. There is another way for black to save himself here. Do you know what it is? Okay.
No, that doesn't work.
Why not?
Oh, I guess it does work. No.
Let's look at it.
Oh yeah, I guess it does work because I was talking about this, but that actually doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. So what about king to c3?
Oh yeah,
instead of king to b3.
Straight.
What about this? Now if you queen, I'm mating you.
That's a joke. I don't want to promote to a knight. I mean, I want to promote to a knight, but I don't think that helps.
Why not?
Out here? No, because then the soulmate. Oh no, it doesn't. And then.
Yeah, Railbird, you got it.
What?
Someone in chat has it.
Oh well, someone. Let's see what he got.
Yeah,
I got the under promotion part, but then after this, what's the obvious move here?
I mean, how many legal moves do you have that don't get mated?
Not many. I guess it's just this.
Yep.
Okay, I see. You can force one away.
So, this is an important defensive idea because if this pawn were a central pawn or a bishop's pawn, we would have to use this method. We wouldn't have the stalemate defense. Whereas under promotion to knight, where it can be very dangerous in the corner, as we'll see in a moment, but as long as the king and knight, all you have to remember about this endgame is as long as the king and knight don't get separated, you're fine. Right? Importantly, notice the knight next to the king protects this square that the white king would need to be on to checkmate us. And sure, there's some zugzwang ideas and that sort of thing, but for the most part, black really doesn't need to be too of... all you really need to remember is, if I keep my knight beside my king, I'm drawing. So, I included...
But I think...
Go ahead.
I just realized I've never, ever played a game with that idea, to my knowledge, that came up.
Huh?
So I wonder how many games I could have saved had I ever studied that and not been a lazy opening theory guru, like every nerd is under like master level.
Well, I've saved my classic more than one. Uh, but yeah, all right. So let's turn our attention to rook pawns. So the question here is, does the same idea work? And I guess this is white to move as well. So let's put a move on the board.
I mean, the only move.
Mm-hmm. And once again,
I don't. Well, now I can't get away, so no.
right. So with a knight in the corner, we actually run out of squares here.
Very quickly.
Yep. And so instead we have to have some other form of defense. So white to move says check. What now?
Play the corner. Well, the good news is if you play like this, and he can't come in because that's obviously not the point. So if you play like this, then I'm back here. So I think that's the drawing idea here.
Absolutely. You got it.
This one I have done personally many times. This is fun. So.
White wins that endgame with the bishop pawn turning into a knight. Are you talking about this? Sorry. This position? I may have to challenge that assessment. I could definitely be in the mood to learn something here, but I'm just gonna add this. Sorry. Check here, here, knight. You're saying this is winning? I think that there are tricks, but I don't think this exact position. The b pawn, not the
Oh,
bishop
that's
pawn.
cool. I just thought we did.
Let's see. Sorry, where was that? Where are we? Pawn on the b file. White wins that endgame. I see. Okay, okay. So this exact position is drawn. The knight on b7 is lost. I think that's the position you're thinking of, where the knight doesn't have. We can end up with the knight not having squares here. Or sorry, b2. I remember it's these two central, sorry, the two corner squares that are in trouble, but to my knowledge, these two are safe.
Do we have a table base to tell us?
Yeah, I'm looking at table base right now.
Yeah.
King d3, knight a3, rook a2, knight b1, rook c2, king d1. Yeah,
Somewhat.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because I am looking at table bases here and you guys can see the results. But I do think I know what position you're talking about. Rook b2, king c1. We're repeating. And if you want to play around with it, feel free. King c1, rook b3, knight d2. Yeah. If you want to play around with it, feel free. I can, I'll post the fen in chat. You can copy this onto an analysis board for yourself and play around with it. But I do want to move on because there are more ideas to cover, and to my knowledge, the only exception to that is with the knight on a1 or b2. I did want to use a table base to check that out. In general, I am not using a table base. I'm done. You guys can see it over here if I am using a table base. But okay, so this one we already covered. This was under promotion to knight in the corner, and we see the knight gets dominated. so that doesn't work. So in the corner here, yeah, you came up with a stalemate defense. This is very nice. Good idea to remember with rook and knight pawns, is that we can hide in the corner for some stalemates sometimes. This one, all right. This is one of my favorite moments of, and this is an attacking motif for white. So, oops, black plays king to f2. How should we react? Slightly, still there? Hello? Your mic is muted, just as a heads up. Worked, you like this one. Fantastic. Since it seems like Sleightly has left. Yeah, very nice find. So the correct maneuver is rook f8 check, and if the king moves back in front of the pawn, we let him there. Oh, sorry, we leave him there and we approach the pawn. And after king to e2, we have rook to g8. And now the point is, we've gained a single tempo. This king was on f2, now he's on f3. Right? And this ends up making all of the difference. So if we play this out, rook to f8, king to e2, rook to g8, king to f3, king to d3, g3, rook to f8, king to g2, king to e2, and so on and so forth, we're going to see that white is just in time to pick up this pawn. For example, even something like this is... did I screw this up? Let's see. What am I doing? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Sleightly at the same time. Sorry. To g2, king to e2, king to g1. Oh, duh. Do this, right? I believe. Check on the H file. No stalemate. Sorry. Which position? Wow, now I'm losing track of that. Anyway, G2. Check on the H file. I don't have a check on the H file. Are you thinking this? And I'm promoting to knight next? No? Wow, this is mildly embarrassing. Yeah, rook to g8. So this probably also... Yeah, rook to... Ugh. Okay. Oh yeah, king to f2. Huh. That's right. Okay, and the difference between this and the position we were looking at previously is that the king is close enough, and our rook is positioned behind the pawn rather than out here. Sorry. Harder to do this when I don't have someone to talk it through with me. But yeah, this check ends up making all the difference, because if we rewind this, and we see after king to f2 what happens if we come... Sorry, if we just start with king d3 right away. Can you guys read this out? Let's see, g3, rook f8, king e1. Now all of a sudden we're not in time. So for example, this is just going to be a repetition. So you have to come here, and after g2 here. Now we have the same under promotion to knight to save us. So yeah, very nice. Rook to f8, followed by coming back to force the black king back. Good find. Next up, we have just the idea of shouldering with the king. So this one, before we were looking at a position where we had the white king here and the rook behind this way, now we have the white king approaching from the rear of the pawn. So after Rook to H2 check. What's the correct move? Looking forward in Twitch chat. For the record, if you're watching this on Lichess, I believe that you can click the stream title there, and it will take you to our Twitch stream, and you can chat with us here. So, any suggestions from the chat? What black should play in this position? King to A3? Absolutely. Yeah, so there's no stalemate here. We have to play king to A3, and this just stops the white king from coming in. Yeah, this just stops the white king from getting into the pawn, and after anyway, white doesn't have anything better than repeating. So yeah, just noticing that we can use our king to keep the white king out of the way. On king b1, it's the bad knight promotion, precisely. So rook h2, king b1, king b3, and queening gets us mated, so promotion to knight, and king c3. This brings us back to the previous position. Notice here black has no moves with this knight. Thought I heard a bump in the night. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm also kind of working right now, so I had to take a call.
No problem. Welcome back. It's okay. You missed a couple examples. Want me to run you through
Why
them?
can't I hear anything?
Yeah. Deafened. Let's see. Could be able to. This is exercise for the chat while we get audio issues with Sleightly worked out. It is.
Oh, there goes. There goes.
Welcome back. All right, so you missed a few things. Do you need me to run you through
them? What'd you guys do?
Okay.
Where are we?
So last thing you saw was bad knight promotion, right?
Yes.
Cool. So we found the stalemate defense with rook pawns, and then we found one very nice idea to give an intermezzo check here.
Yeah, and then the white king can approach, and you can pick up the pawn. Yeah.
Right. And then last idea here was if we reverse the role of the white king, if he's behind the pawn and trying to get at it from this side, there is no stalemate, so we need to come behind and keep the white king away. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, this brings us to our current position, which is incredibly reminiscent of our first position, right? In fact, after a5, almost exactly the same first position has arisen, because rook h5 cuts the king off, so on and so forth. Life is good for white. So, can you find the right way forward for black to draw this position?
So this one I will remember because this was like one of the first times I ever like swindled an endgame, or so I thought. Because I made the move by accident and was like, oh, that worked. And then I later went back and found out it was correct. So I do know this position. And the winning idea is to bring the king to c5 so you can't be cut off, or at least even with it. And then you also want it c5 rather than b5 because you need to minimize how far this white king can come in.
Very nice.
Move here.
Yeah, after king to c5, we can see, there's various ways to approach the pawn, but yeah, white is one tempo slower in getting to this pawn, and ultimately it makes all of the difference. So this is probably the crowning example of using a king to box out the enemy king, at least in rook against pawn endgames. Puzzle for the chat. If you've seen this puzzle before, fantastic. It's one of my favorites by a certain Richard Reddy. Richard, wow. That actually his first name? Yeah. Anyway.
I think it's Richard Reddy.
Fantastic. Now I feel less bad about just blurting that out. But see if you can solve it. It is white to move and win.
This one I do know. I think there's two winning moves.
Mm,
I think there are two because they transpose on the next move.
you are correct. Would you like to enlighten us as to what they are?
I want to give the chat a second more. Hard thing is you have to think about. Um, remember when I first saw this and learned about this position, I remember thinking, and it's a lot. I think the key of this position is recognizing that um, long time, and that you have to make it so that in the movements of your king and rook, and I think it's very nuanced how it's done. Um, the way you could do it, if you want to be, I think that the stylish way is just rook d3, um,
All right.
and just like, oh really, you want to come, you want to poke my rook, feel free, I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What's happening in this game after I don't know either king to e4 or d4? Let's look at both of those.
Then the trick is you just go to rook d1,
Okay. Haven't we
and
just lost a tempo after king to e4?
but we wanted to lose a tempo because we want our king to be able to approach,
Hmm. That seems like
and
an important reoccurring idea.
and that's when the trick is. We need, it's important to give. It's effectively like, the king rook version of opposition here. We're just trying to get our king to be able to approach in time with the black king advancing, so that this pawn never gets out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Keeps not anymore.
That's right. So let's just go ahead and put the last few moves of this on the board for those viewers who can't necessarily calculate it. An important idea in these types of endgames is putting our king on the opposite side of the pawn as the enemy king. The reason other moves don't work is that black is able to kind of refuse to choose a side, and in doing so is able to keep the white king away. So in this variation, I'm just gonna play out the rest of this. Black chooses the right side, so white comes to the other side, and it doesn't really matter what order these moves get played in. For black, he can choose to play d3 instead of king to e3, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, white is just in time to be able to catch this pawn. Whereas if we play rook to d1 immediately, let's turn this puzzle on its head. How do you draw this position now?
Uh, e4.
Absolutely, okay. And so the white king wants to get around the pawn after king d7?
But now you can just play here.
Precisely. And the black king is able to shoulder the white king and prevent him from ever approaching the pawn. And just running forward would lose in this position, but here we're able to just keep the white king away. Okay, and after this, for example, yep, good enough. I believe I could be wrong. I mean,
I think you can advance here as well.
yeah, I was gonna say I think you can play king c4 because you're on the same side as well. Although,
Yeah, I think you can do either.
is that transpose? Let me check very quickly. Ah, no, king c4 is lost, in fact, because
Oh.
this transposes to the mirror of the winning position. He's able to reach the far side of the pawn in time. So king c5 is in fact the only move, and quite a nice one to find. Okay, this is, these, what, 5, 8 ideas? I don't even know how many we've covered. Let me double check, and we can refresh as we go. So we covered rook f and h pawns just to try to figure out where our rook goes. And these two positions together really can be taken as a guide to how to play these positions. They're not too tough, as long as, if you're attacking, try to keep the black king on the edge, and if you're defending, well, keep your rook as flexible as possible for the most part. Keep your king in front of the h pawn only if it would be necessary to go to the edge otherwise. And otherwise, you just stay on g7 or h7. Sorry, f7 or g7. Gosh. And that's ultimately as hard as it is to play these evidently mystifying and complicated endgames. I'm sure you could mess around with a table base for a very long time and not come up with those very general, very easy conclusions, right? But that's, for instance, this isn't a position that I would commit to memory. This isn't, I wouldn't work too hard to remember the theory for these positions. I would just remember, keep my rook flexible, keep the king on in front of both pawns, or the f pawn if I have to choose, unless it would force me to the edge of the board, and then I would go to the h pawn. That's all I have to remember. 2 sentences. Keep my king off the edge, stay centralized. So,
Do you have a little more time before we go? I was going to say, because I would love to see you take a wonderful puzzle from the ledger.
oh, absolutely. Do I ever? All right. So is this? Let me pull up that puzzle, or do you want to screenshot it and,
So,
or just link it to me, and I will.
yeah, I'll hit you up in Slack. So there's the
Fantastic. Whoops, sorry, that probably screwed something up for you guys.
and so so I, was, I don't know if I call him, but he asked me to look this over to just check and make sure it was a good puzzle. I thought it was a brilliant puzzle. I thought it worked out great with our in-game theme this week.
All right. As I set this up, those of you who have already seen it can start laughing at me and making fun of me for not immediately solving it. And
So I think one of the things I like the most about it is I talk about it regardless. One of the things that's hard about chess, and I think that I've been working to try to do games, like holistically, is that at any point, if you're dropped in a position, and being able to do that, I think keeps you from accidentally ending up with bad ideas or not failing to recognize when you've miscalculated or anything. And I think it's a tough thing to do, but it's I think very important. This position is really quite. I thought it was brilliant because regardless of how it ended up here, it got to a point where there's one move for black, theoretically, if with perfect play by white. And in the actual game, black missed the move, but then white blundered to give it back to him, and then he missed it again. But it's just a great position.
Okay. So just running through moves and trying to find it by elimination. Clearly my knight is dominated, so that crosses out a big chunk of them. I don't think it's too hard to see that this doesn't necessarily do anything. The white king will come and eat these pawns essentially. The knight will have to give up for this guy. So I don't think that's too good. Then that only leaves us with a7, king a5, and king b5, right? If
That
I'm
seems reasonable.
counting legal moves. Okay. So on a7, let me see if I can find something to refute it. That almost seems like white's in Zugzwang, but could be mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, what does he play after a7? Sorry, a2. Wow. Coordinates are hard. Oh, he's bishop to a1. Oh. And then I'm blockaded out from ever helping the pawn. Okay. Let me just make... Can I not make moves? Did I set this up upside down? Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Yeah, I set this up upside down. Alright. Okay, so where are the pawns? They're on a3, Um,
on
G6 and
H.
F5. 6 F5. Okay.
Now you can calculate because
One more time. You cut in and out there.
I said the beautiful thing about this is you can't even play anything out. You have to only calculate because the board won't let you play any of the moves.
But okay. Wow. Somehow computer got enabled to do that. No. Okay. I
I
don't
don't
think I
get it. If you
saw. Anyway. Um. But okay. This is. Let
I
me
think that
flip
three
perspective.
reasonable moves to consider.
Okay. Black's perspective. All right. I don't think that King A4 has any advantages over King to B4, unless I'm missing something very obvious. But right after A2, bishop to A1, the bishop was blockading the pawn, and I don't see anything that I can do to prevent White's plan of King to D4, King to E5, and pushing the E pawn and potentially winning these tender pawns. Yeah, it was 3-digit elo player. I think it should be fixed now. Now the pawns are going this way. Um, but yeah, so I think my initial impression is that this will be uh, winning for white. Let's see. Because I don't see how I can get my king back in here. Um, and eventually, like, white can just play this and come in. So I think I can chalk that up as losing. So
I think I think A2 is interesting. The move I like here, just for style points, is I love this.
bishop c3. Oh man, that's nasty. Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful? It just highlights the fact that Black's king has no business playing in the game anymore. He's just in timeout now.
I mean, knight c7.
Uh,
You're eventually gonna have to move the bishop again, I guess is my point. Yeah, okay.
oh, sure, but now I mean this is fine.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But I just think it's beautiful right there because now we just advance and it's over. But
I mean,
um,
okay, but bishop still needs to. Uh,
yeah, of course it ends up there, but it's beautiful. It's
yeah, right.
beautiful.
Fair play, fair play. It's okay. I think that by process of elimination, I have ruled out everything except for king to a4 and king to b4.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to say that after king to a4, king to c4, the black king being trapped on an edge is probably of no benefit to him. Um, and on the
I
other
think
hand,
he's
after king to b4, if he wants to keep up with me, he's blocking this diagonal, importantly. Um, so I think I can exploit that. So now, for instance, if I play a2,
don't think A2 is the move you want to play.
you're probably right.
Because what about this?
Overloaded? No. Okay. I mean, I have knight c7, but you just continue with the king. You are
Yep.
correct there. So I do not want to play a2.
But if
Knight
you
to
play
a2.
A2, yeah.
Oh, I can play
So
knight
not A2
c7.
now.
Yeah, and I can make a barrier this way.
Right. Isn't that purple?
That's cute. Very nice. Very,
So I
very
love
nice.
this. I love this game because like it was just a very simple position. It has a lot of very neat tactics in it.
Well, I still have to reckon with this, yeah? Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Very, very nice.
So I thought that was beautiful.
And now I do.
So black has just enough in the position to hold with this. If you can't play A2 too early, you've got to see knight C7. Their
Mm-hmm.
attempts don't really get there for white. But what I love about this is that, or what I thought was so instructive, I thought looking at this is that this position, black had spent a lot of time bringing his king over here, trying to get this pawn. Up until this exact move, um, black was kind of fine, but we got this to this position. He no longer had any progress to be made.
Mm-hmm.
He'd spent all this time in moves that were reasonable to get to this position, and he ended up in this position, and this was kind of a bailout moment when he could have realized he had just enough to save this draw, and uh, and I think that's really, I mean, technically it's important, but I think that highlights that's a huge problem I have in my games. Like I get a plan, and then I fail to recognize when I miss something in my plan, and I need to bail out. I need to find a different solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so, both this is a puzzle, I thought was great, but I also thought in context of the game, constantly reevaluating our position, reevaluating our plans, making sure we haven't missed something.
Yeah, that's that is very important to, and I think especially in a position like this, realistically you can calculate all the way to the end, right? Like that, for instance, A2 here. I mean, I stopped my calculation. I guess let's see. I played this move, and I realized that I could stop my calculation here, um, but for instance, it just you could keep calculating here. You could just go all the way to the end until one of the pawns is promoting because it's all forced moves, right? There's not a lot of variations.
I mean, they're just going to walk up the board together,
Right.
and then the only thing you have to watch out for is to the pawn checks. In this case, it doesn't matter, but you just have to be aware of
Hmm.
knight c7 tricks.
Well,
It doesn't do anything.
right. And you do have to be aware that this is sort of a semi-barrier, right? Where we're blockading some of the squares. And so we do need to have an idea in mind to break that barrier, but as long as we realize that we can push e7 without the pawn hanging, we're good. So, yeah, this is quite a nice puzzle. I'm a fan. Um, Good selection, but I think as a puzzle, being able to being able to solve it by elimination is not too uncommon, especially in endgames. But I don't know. It leaves something out there, I guess.
I mean, I think
Something
you
to
should
think
be able
about.
to. I think to solve it, you have to if you can. There's two things. You have to realize that no, if you can recognize no pawn move promotes
Mm-hmm.
before the white king gets back,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to king b4 move. But if you really wanted to make, I mean, I think what made a great puzzle is it all depended on you seeing this knight c7 idea at the right time,
Mm-hmm. Well,
and
it's
that's
I my issue is that you don't have to see knight c7 here when you play king b4. Oops, somehow I can't make that the main line. Something is weird here. Sorry, study is acting up a little bit. I don't have to see knight c7 until I need to play it. Does that make sense? Like I can play king b4
don't
on
know
the
if you
basis that everything else loses, and I don't know how to evaluate this.
then well that's fair. However, then maybe I should say it this way: if you want to recognize you are drawing, you
Hmm.
have to see the knight c7 idea.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Because otherwise you have no drawing idea here. Every other move loses.
hmm
So you either see that idea when it's time. Maybe you play
hmm
king before, but then you still have more ideas, uh, or you just lose when you get to that position. You don't see the right move. So
right. Yeah, I
even
don't
if you
know.
you right move, you there's more to it than that. But I thought it was nice.
Hmm. Yeah, fair. Fair play, fair play. Okay. So for you guys in the chat, do you guys have any questions about how to play, about A, anything we've covered today, B, any endgame at all? Fielding all endgame questions. Uh, Next week, I think we will have a section on heavy piece endgames. I know that was requested for this week. I was not able to find anything significantly worth covering. So I did want to cover the kind of fundamentals of rook against pawn positions, because next week we can take, or I guess, yeah, probably next week we can take a look at some test positions and see how well you guys understand those ideas.
Sounds good.
So,
Well, I don't know. I think this has been helpful. Like I said, everyone always needs to look at more rook end games, and I got a tutored lesson from the brilliant on how one can be less awful, and it's mostly by not playing bad moves. So I can work
hey,
on that.
that's one of my favorite hobbies to take up is not playing bad moves. Um, yeah, I know. What's really interesting to me is the way that I think there's, five or six, I keep shrinking that number, but a very limited number of main ideas that are so vastly applicable. And I know at some point I really would love to cover the theory of opposite colored bishop endgames, because I think everyone just kind of assumes they're drawn and maybe doesn't always know how to play them. Um, and I think that'll be a nice contrast to this, where there's still, you know, only a few governing positions, but I think we'll be able to see very clearly there as well as here how we can kind of reduce very complicated positions into very simple ideas. Because I think here we just covered the fundamentals. So I think next week probably we can do something with Rook End games in terms of breaking those positions down into these fundamentals. Um, yeah, thank you for coming
Sounds
on.
good.
Appreciate it. And seems like chat is fairly satisfied. Um, we will be back casting coverage with the Leechess 4545 League. The reason that we were not doing commentary tonight is no one scheduled games for us. So, you know,
Both Tony Rotella and H. Bedortes, two people we'd love to cover, put it too early in the day.
those
And
terrible
unfortunately,
people.
Determining and I aren't independently wealthy, and we could not go cover those games rather than work.
Right. So, but we will be back on Saturday. We will be doing, yeah, I know it's a Tuesday. It's a quick turnaround. We will be back on Saturday doing coverage of the Leechess 4545 League. So if you want to see how people should press advantages and how they blunder instead and don't, tune in. Caster's Curse, it's happening. But yeah, thank you all for coming out. Go ahead, give the channel a follow. Hit up our YouTube channel if you missed any of the stream. How do you get our games commented on? Send me a message on Slack or Sleightly a message on Slack. I am at Determination there, um, and we can talk details over there.
Yeah, actually, I've watched all of Bo Vice games live, so I have already in my mind commentated his games.
Perfect.
But
Yeah, I think, is this an open Discord channel? It is not for casting. Um, in the future, I think there are some analysis. We do some analysis. I know streamed an analysis session that was open to everyone. I think for casting, for right now, we are keeping a closed cast. If you're interested in getting in on it, send me a message on Slack and we can talk more about that. Yeah, I am at Determination on Slack. Sleightly is at Sleightly on Slack. We're hopefully not too hard to find. And yeah, if you guys want to check any part of our stream today, it is all up, available on Twitch, VODs available on YouTube. Um, and yeah, if you guys are welcome. I really enjoyed streaming today. I hope Slightly did as well. But you guys are the reason we stream. So, uh, all right.
see
Have
you
a
guys
good one,
later.
everyone. Yep.